The program on water governance at UBC is currently conducting a study of Indigenous water co-governance in Canada, focusing on BC and Alberta. And this study is funded by a grant from Water Economics Policy and Governance Network. And our partners include UBC, West Moberly First Nation, Keepers of the Water, First Nations University of Canada, and Northwest Indian College out of the USA. And this presentation actually focuses on two-eyed seeing and the ethics of Indigenous community-based research, building research partnerships focused on sustainable water governance and Indigenous law. And we have not yet begun data collection, and so I'm talking today about the process of community engagement. So last year, before I was on the team and I got brought in after, they were at a bush camp. So most of these pictures are from the bush camp. And this is an example of the shale deposits, the slide before. And you can see that we have community members here, and there's an elder there. And really, this is Caleb Bain. He's the executive director of Keepers of the Water. He's from Treaty 8. He's a First Nations lawyer, and so he brings together two-eyed seeing with his traditional knowledge and the Western knowledge that he'll bring together. And that's learning from one eye with the strengths of Indigenous knowledge and the ways of knowing, and from the other eye with strengths of Western knowledges and ways of knowing. And a two-eyed seeing model is promoted by the Institute of Aboriginal Peoples' Health, which is from the Canadian Institutes of Health Research. So simply put, our project blends both Indigenous and Western ways of knowing, and this is a complementary governance model. Rooted in community and fostered by sustained trust relationships, community-based research includes a wide range of practices that are situated in community, are collaborative, action-oriented, equitable, and grounded in sustained relationships of trust. And community-based research is appropriate when working with, by, and for Indigenous communities because it assumes equity among researchers and participants. So in Indigenous community-based research, we add the ideas of 4 core values: respect, responsibility, reciprocity, and relevance. And this really embodies values that we understand are not only relevant to our community partners, but required. These are medicines that are hanging here. So you have sage that's hanging there that has been harvested at the bush camp. And when we talk about harvesting, for example, when we talk about reciprocity, you put down tobacco and you say thank you to Mother Earth, and you say thank you to the Creator. This is Caleb Bain. And what's written on there says, respect the land, respect the people in South Slavey, which is the Dene language. So again, he was given this gift from an elder. And often when you're with an elder, you give gifts of tobacco, cloth, and often money because you can't go and chop down trees or haul water anymore. So that's an example of reciprocity. Indigenous methodologies are shaped by local knowledge, traditions, life experiences, stories, and visions. And this acknowledges the unique status of Indigenous people in Canada. Community engagement through inclusion of all community members and respecting diversity is an important principle, as is cultural responsiveness, through the guidance of elders and ceremonies, and through the adherence of respect for individual spiritual beliefs, and reciprocity through the acknowledgement and recognition of research participants' contributions. We also employ the ethical principles of ownership, access, control, and possession. We call that OCAP. And this is used in Canada as a specific protocol for working with Indigenous communities. This implies that ownership of data rests with communities, and those who have control retain control, and that there's prescribed protocols in terms of access and possession. OCAP also is really First Nations governance and self-government. It is a political response. And it is our responsibility as a team to ethically engage and to take direction from our community partners. And research must be with, by, and for Keepers of the Water in Treaty 8, and those are our community partners. Our research team is comprised of Indigenous academics, community members, professionals, as well as academic and community allies that are dedicated to conducting interdisciplinary research on water sustainability and fostering dialogue with communities and decision makers. Working in partnership with Indigenous-led NGOs, Keepers of the Water, and for West Moberly First Nation, our project focuses on 3 questions. How are co-governance regimes for Indigenous water rights evolving? What are the advantages, disadvantages, and impacts on decision making? And how could distributed governance and collaboration in the context of emerging and evolving legal regimes for Indigenous water rights enhance sustainable water governance? So our methods that we use include online surveys, qualitative interviews, qualitative data analysis, governance mapping, regulatory and legal analysis, Indigenous storytelling, and literature reviews. And at the request of our community partner, we're going to conduct a literature review on community-based research methodologies in decolonization and post-colonial research methodologies. We are also going to use the Indigenous storytelling methodology, which is very appropriate for this project, as we will be engaging participants in in-depth research, in-depth interviews. And stories originate from oral traditions within Indigenous societies around the world. So we're really excited to do this work. And the online interviews that we develop, they're going to be used for the youth, so that they're appropriate for the communities, because online interviews aren't going to be appropriate for all participants. And our work will be strengthened with our research our work will result in strengthened partnerships with our partners, and it will be capacity building and impact policy change. And when you talk about reciprocity, I hate reading from notes, but I was worried about my slides. When you talk about reciprocity and you talk about Indigenous engagement, you're really talking about what the community wants, and the community wants and needs capacity building, and they want to make sure that the research is relevant to them. If it's not relevant and it's not driven by them, then there's no need to actually engage in the research, because that's what Indigenous community-based research is. It's with, by, for, and driven by Indigenous communities. So, miigwech, thank you.
Now, given that water sustainability, water governance is an issue in many communities, many Indigenous communities throughout Canada, and you've got this narrative-driven research approach, do you expect that your insights will be transferable to other cases beyond your own?
Yeah, so, you know, it's hard. I found it really hard to do this presentation because I actually was brought into this a year late, and they brought me in. I'm not an expert in Indigenous water governance. My role is actually, I'm more of a health person, and so they want me to connect the links to health, number one, and they want me to help to develop a model on community engagement. And so what I hope is that we'll end up with in this is that we have a small grant right now that we're going to carry out. We're going to develop a model, and we just applied for a large SSHRC grant, and it looks, the way that SSHRC runs right now, I guess they give you initial feedback, and it looks like we're going to get this SSHRC grant. And then what I hope we'll be able to do is have a model, and that model can be adapted and transferable. And what I would like to do then is to be able to bring it back to Saskatchewan, because I know water and water governance and health-related issues are huge in Saskatchewan, but also across Canada. And so I've been building models in other areas of my research. I do community-driven work, so if you looked at my CV, you'd say she has no idea what she wants to do, but really it's a wide and breadth of version of issues, because communities are driving the research. And so I've been developing models, and models that can be adapted and used in different parts of Canada. So I expect the same with this project. And that's why I wanted to make sure I used notes so I didn't miss points with a really rapid flying pictures by. But yes, I do expect that we'll be able to have models that, again, because Indigenous communities are very unique and diverse, I don't expect that this model will work identically in other communities, but certainly it can be adapted.
Thank you very much for an interesting talk. As a British person who might not know so much about water sustainability issues facing Indigenous communities, could you just outline what those issues mainly are? Is it too little water? Is it too much water? Is it the role of climate change? Is it access to that water that's the issue?
It's because we have, well, number one of the issues that's happening right now is we have pipelines going through sovereign territories in Indigenous communities, and we have water that's being contaminated. And so because we have sovereign territories that are not being recognized and water that's being contaminated, traditional territories that are not being recognized, so co-governance and co-governance models are vitally important. And this is why we have such a great, diverse, dynamic team with allied individuals. I mean, it's not like we want to work in silos and we're saying, like, this is our traditional territory, get out of here. We're saying, like, we understand that this is an issue for everybody, but we have to recognize sovereign territory, and we have to recognize that there's traditional lands, and we have to recognize how are we going to figure out how to work together, because Keepers of the Water, for example, that's an NGO agency that wants to work with allies, but you also have to at the same time recognize those territories and that sovereignty. From my perspective and the teachings that I have, we've been here from time immemorial, and that has to be recognized and understood.
Thank you.
I was just kind of interested in how you're doing the elicitation, because you're talking about doing this both online and in person and in several different mechanisms. And my experience, that tends to cause very different reactions from different people. You get different types of feedback and different. So I was curious why you picked that and what your experiences with using it are.
Well, generally, I don't pick it. Usually I work with the communities to pick it, and that's really what happened here. We work with the communities, and they're the ones that suggested these things. They're like, well, for the youth, we think online's going to work better. In this particular case, we have some limited budget issues, and so they wanted to do some phone interviews. And then for the elders and knowledge keepers, we're going to go to the community, and we're going to speak directly with knowledge keepers and elders and some of the chief and council members. And so that's how they wanted it to be set up. And so, we'll see when we get there. The other thing that they requested, and Caleb Bain has been really instrumental in this, he said, I think what we have to do is we want you, Carrie, and your research assistant to come here and actually spend time in the community and be in the community, which isn't a surprise to me. That happens a lot. But because I'm new to the project and I haven't had a chance to really get to know everybody, we're going to go and actually be in the community for a week and probably not even elicit any information that week, just go and be in the community. And that's, I think what a lot of people don't realize is when you do community-based work, it's not just about collecting data and getting the right information and getting the right responses. It's about really, really getting to know the community. And so we're going to go and stay in somebody's house, whoever wants us, right? And that's how it goes, right? And it'll work out how it's supposed to work out. But we did that methodology based on what they suggested, and because they're the ones driving it, then that's what we're going to do. And this one's a small sample, so I'm not very worried about the different responses, and we will see how that works out. And then, for the larger project, we'll measure how the responses were, and we'll decide from there how to go.